Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ryan Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Alright, a lot of people have been asking for this video. Whoa. Let's get into this.
Now get ready. Here we go.
Okay, so if this is your first time here, welcome to your new favorite channel. Go ahead and start binge watching everything. It's fine. Most people do. There's nothing wrong about that. You're going to learn some stuff, and that's a great thing. Alright, so I'm going to break the video up into a couple different segments today. For those of you here for the short content, this just looking for the quick in and out, here it is. Looks like something failed in the arm, right? Alright, like, subscribe, do all that stuff downstairs. Stay off the air gates. Bye. For those of you not wanting the full content but a little bit more, it's like, looks like something failed in the arm. Possibly a crack somewhere? Weird, right? Traveling rides, who'd have guessed it? Like, subscribe, do all that stuff downstairs. Stay off the air gates. Alright. For everyone else, welcome! Hope you're having a good day. Alright, so in this event, it looks like 23 people, although a lot of stuff says 20 people, it says 23 people were injured in when this theme park ride broke in half and crashed to the ground in Green Mountain Park in, probably getting this wrong, Taif, Saudi Arabia. I don't know. This is the 360 degrees ride. This ride's actually manufactured by a company called Rides and Fun. Interesting. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree when they called their name the Twist and Son. A lot of things rhyme with this manufacturer. It's like, okay. So, first of all, I know we've all seen this video floating around the internet. And these videos aren't mine, so I'm not trying to take credit for these or do anything else. But I did want to look at the Twist and Fun ride, basically, from the manufacturer. Okay, so we're in the back lot. Cool. Alright. It's amazing what you could do with drones these days. This is the 24-seat model. They make a couple different models of this, but this is the 24-seat model, the same one that broke. Fairly simple construction. Alright. Not sure if the music will let me play it on YouTube though. YouTube likes to copyright stuff, so might not have audio with this, I don't know yet. Alright, so what I wanted to do, I wanted to bring it back here at the very beginning, and I wanted to advance it to right here. Hey, look at that. There we go. Very cool. So I was hoping over the weekend and stuff that there would be more information that came out on this particular accident. The government officials out there in Saudi Arabia look like they have shut everything down, doing an investigation, which I applaud. That's the correct decision, is to shut the stuff down and figure out what happened, why did it happen. Obviously, safety is the number one priority here. So looking at this particular model in this video, and this is a demo video that they put onto YouTube, so there's nothing, like, this isn't top secret stuff. It's on YouTube as part of their demo thing. I'm looking at this video right here, and this is where it failed. And we'll look at some pictures in just a second here. But what I'm noticing is that the lighting is not in the arm itself. So in the arm, in the actual metal tube of the arm, you typically don't do things like drill holes and put big like lights and stuff inside of there unless you put a really big insert around the light or a bung around the light in order to keep the stresses down in that area. So this is no exception here. So it looks like what they did is they put a sheath around the outside of the tube. Basically, they put all the lighting on the sheath and then put the sheath on. Now, this is a problem. It's not a good thing to do. It's great if you're dealing with constant erections, which short term, these rides that travel around a lot. I'm not saying this is a traveling ride. It could be. I'm honestly not sure in which that place was operating this particular attraction as. But places that travel around a lot, it's not a big deal because they say, hey, when we break this down, what we do is we take those sheaths off and we get to the actual arm itself and you could see the arm. It's not a big deal. But if you were to install this, let's say, in a permanent park to where that sheath never comes off of there, then that's covering the arm up. It's covering it from inspections. You can't see the actual arm that's actually doing the work. We'll come back to this. Okay, so this is the crash now. Let's take a look at this. Listen to it. Oh, man, that is gnarly. Yeah. There was a lot of injuries involved with this. Luckily, I don't think there was any fatalities, which is, they were close. They were really close. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, so let's stop it right here. And let's just take a look at the state of what's going on. Okay, so we've got the arm that comes up here, and we have this, I would call this a reinforcement gusset, like a plate almost, that comes up here. And then you see how it's like a nice, kind of like a curve right there just below the plate. All right, and then on the arm, it's hard to tell, but on the arm itself, it looks like there's a notch missing out of it. Again, that's because that is that exterior sheath, that's a lighting sheath that's around the actual support arm. So you can't, in this picture, and in fact in a lot of pictures, you can't see the actual failed component because you're looking at the external lighting ring for this thing. You can't see the actual steel on the inside of it. The only thing you can see is right up here at the very top. This is the actual steel. This is the steel arm that was holding the weight. There's the support gussets for it on each side. That's where the failure happened. This looks very similar to basically what happened on Fury 325 a long time ago, where it looked like the whole column just ripped in half. Looks like that right there. I was surfing around looking for pictures, and basically I found this. It's not a great picture, but you could see it's a different angle of the accident site. Here's the arm sticking up right here in the center, and again, here's that support arm, the other side of it, still up in the air, which of course, because the 360 down here at the bottom, that is the counterweight for the arm. So it's like, okay, that's a heavier thing, went down. The fact that the counterweight went down to the bottom means it overrode the motors, but the motors typically don't have brakes on them really because they're not really meant to stop the arm. It puts too much stress into it. So you can see the sheared part right up there. All right, so let's talk about why would you have the counterweight on there? It's like, okay, isn't the counterweight supposed to stop this sort of thing? It's like, no, the counterweight's not. The purpose of the counterweight is to offset the gondola on one side. So you have the pivot in the center, and then you have the long arm, and then you have the gondola down at the bottom. Well, those two motors on the side can't lift the gondola up and do a 360 on its own. It needs help. So what do? They put an equally long arm to the other side of that pivot, and they put the big counterweight up inside of there. And what that does is it offsets the weight of the gondola so those two motors can easily rotate the assembly. So what I think the problem is on this is I think basically the support tube that is holding the gondola, that's actually the main support arm, was undersized. It was basically, the diameter might be correct, but it was not thick enough. But then the major problem was that they had that lighting sheath on the outside, and that was covering where those gussets met the arm. And that's where all of the stress is right there where those gussets meet that arm. Now, if we go back to this video, I'm not going to use the video function, but if we go back to this video, you can see that right here at the bottom, this is on both sides, because the top is holding weight, the bottom is holding weight on both sides, that this area right here where the mouse is and that area right there are the most critical spots to inspect on the entire assembly. Those are the points of failure. Why? Because that is the heat affected zone where the welding happens. So they added those two gussets inside there and they welded that to those beams. Now what happened when you weld to a beam, what happens is the weld is always stronger than the parent material. So your tubing that they use there is probably going to have a 60,000 psi tensile strength, somewhere right around there. The weld that they put in, normally you use something with a 70,000 psi tensile strength inside of it. So the weld is always stronger than the parent material. Every time, weld stronger than the parent material. Where do welds fail? Everyone talks about this sort of stuff. We could look at something like that and say, oh, I could say the weld failed, and that's the whole reason the arm split in half. It's like, the weld did not fail. I could almost guarantee you, I could almost bet the ranch and say that right now at that accident site, that weld all the way around that gusset on both sides is 100% intact. I would stake my reputation on it. Don't have much of a reputation, but whatever. Anyways, I put a lot of money on that. That weld is 100% intact. So where they fail is just outside of the weld, on the toe of the weld. Right on the toe of the weld, that's where the parent material meets the base material, right where they come together. On that toe of the weld is this little tiny area. It's only a couple of millimeters wide, sometimes up to 5 millimeters wide, all the way around the weld, on both sides of the weld. That is called the heat affected zone. The heat affected zone is what weakens the steel. That's what you have to be careful with, especially if the weld joint was designed wrong, possibly. Never know, maybe there was too much heat in there and that weakened that steel. But in the heat affected zone, especially on these corners right here, right there, and right there, that is where stress gathers, and that is where cracks start. That is where cracks start, right there in that corner. So what you do is anytime you have a corner, if I got a corner like this and it's welded all the way around, I am watching this inside corner like a hawk. I mean, I am just watching, I am looking for anything. Anytime I see a ripple or anything appear next to that corner, I'm going to call BS and shut the whole thing down, take the paint off, and have somebody come in and NDT it for a possible crack in that location, because that is the highest stress. Now, what's very concerning about this particular style of ride is that where that corner is like that, there's a sheath right up in front of it. There's another sheath sitting there. I can't see the parent steel. I can't see that steel behind it. That means I can't inspect it. Now, is it possible that that lighting ring comes off of there? Possible. Is it possible that lighting ring is inspected and the thing is taken apart so they can inspect that entire thing daily? Probably not. That would be more on like a weekly or a monthly inspection, I would assume. But you got to think about the stress that's out there. Another contributing factor to this is the drive motors. Were the drive motors monkeyed with? Were they messed with? Were they reprogrammed? Were they anything like that? The drive motors are the number one source of stress for these rides, because the counterweight just helps the whole thing rotate. The drive motors are what actually has to lift that. So if I take, we'll use a tape measure like this, right? If I take this guy and I extend it way out like this, and I say I just want to take the center pivot and I want to put some torque into it and lift this up like this. No problem, right? No problem. It's like, okay, well, what happens if we add a little bit of weight to it? And I start putting that weight on there. See if I could do this without hitting myself in the face. It might be funny. Subscribe to see me hit myself in my face. All right, now my arm is under pressure holding this little tiny weight out here. And I don't know if you could see that on camera, but now there's actually a bend in the tape measure. This metal is actually deflecting. And you know where all this stress is? Where 100% of the stress is right now? It's right here. It's right where this, let's say this is the gusset on the arm. It's right where this gusset is joined in right there. Right at the tip of my finger is where all the stress is. Now, this is a little more sturdy than that arm was. But, I mean, basically, if I take this steel and push on it just slightly, I can probably get it to fold. No, can't. Ooh, I can use these. This is, oh, these will stay on there. There we go. That's a lot heavier. Ooh. And I might not have to push on that. Okay, great example though. This is a perfect example. Look, all this weight, let's call this the gondola, all this weight is sitting way out here. All right, all the stress is sitting right here. Now, ideally in these situations, the motors would not put this much stress on the arm. Like right now, I'm using a lot of pressure to hold this upright. Realistically, once this much weight gets to right about here, the motor should change direction and go back the other way. And then they come up past this point and get it a little bit higher until it starts to load up weight again, and then it switches direction. That's the swinging, that's that pendulum motion, that's how these rides function. The reason why they don't sit there and in one shot just try to take this and go all the way up over the top is because this is too much weight. I can only move it just a little tiny bit. And if I try to put too much torque with those center motors into that base, let me just try to accelerate this a little bit. Any questions? All right, so that is a possibility. It is a possibility that the torque input on those motors was turned up in order to get the ride to work better. We don't know. I honestly think that this is probably a combination of both of those things. I think this is a little bit, maybe those motors had too much torque in them, and mixed with the fact that you can't see the actual arm itself. I think they probably a little too much torque in those motors and a crack developed, maybe not that morning, maybe not that day, maybe a couple days before, but because that sheathing is protecting that arm and you can't see the edges of those welds, at least it really doesn't look like it, I think at that point that crack was able to, as an engineer would say, that crack was able to propagate, and it only got a little bit, you know, it started out like this and then went like this and then went like that, and then once it got past that certain point, the metal became fatigued around it, and this happens very quick. And once it became fatigued around it, the whole thing basically cracked 360 degrees around. It tore off one way around the tube because it had the lines of stress pulling the assembly apart like a V. So it cracked one way around, it went straight around the tube to the other side, found the other weld, followed its heat-affected zone around, and then continued 360, and the whole thing, pow, came apart. Now, part of that pow that you heard from the video is the weld, is the steel ripping apart part of it. The other part, the major part of it, is simply the metal tubing, the sheathing hitting that arm, because you had that U-shaped sheathing sitting there that the parent material was in, and then it suddenly pulled itself out. So that was a lot of that noise you heard. But sometimes when pipes and stuff fail, they do make a very loud, almost a shotgun style noise. Okay, I advanced it a little bit more in this video again. And again, what I'm seeing is that lighting tube looks like it's covered up everything. There does seem to be a seam down that side, so maybe there's a chance it's removable without having to take the whole thing apart. If this is meant to be a traveling model, they just say, oh, just take them apart. It's a lot easier. But one thing I don't see, I couldn't see in those pictures and I don't see here, is mounting flanges. Now I see right here where the mouse is, I see a lifting eyelet. So it's like, okay, that's probably where the thing is put together with a crane when they take it off. The question is all this one piece that's sitting on a trailer, or is this multiple pieces and somewhere there is a flange that came apart where they two bolt together? I know a lot of rides that swing like that, they have multiple flanges up there, which is always a key stress to look for when the flanges are made, because it's like those lots of heat affected zones and stuff on there, lots of areas to look. Now, why was this one particularly worse than, let's say, an old Frisbee or one of the other, like one of the big pendulum style rides out there, like a Zamperla Disco, like one of those rides? What makes this so much worse is that I think, I'm not calling the designers out like they don't know what they're doing at all, but I think this was probably under designed a little bit, and basically something that could have, by a bigger manufacturer, something that might have just been a crack that might have propagated a little bit and they could have caught it and they said, oh yeah, there's a crack, okay, let's repair it, maybe add some more stiffener plates or two or something. If the redundancy wasn't there in the assembly, it just came 100% apart really quick. It's one of the downsides to designing lightweight things. I mean, looking at the top here, you could see where the lighting tube was cut out to sit around this gusset right here, stiffener plate, and you could see where it's welded right there. So it's like, I honestly don't think that thing is bolted together. I think that entire arm, minus the counterweight, minus the gondola, I think that whole tube is one assembly that just got put together in one place. And here's the last view I have of this. Found it on the internet again. Again, counterweight's heavy. It's down at the bottom. And then you could see this is where that lighting tube, maybe some of this will make more sense to you now. It's like this is where that lighting tube was basically sheared apart. The interior tube where the actual fail was, you can't see that right now. That's inside this lighting tube. There's another steel tube inside of there. That's the one that actually supports the arm. You won't see that. But you can see the mating part where it hooked up, and that was right up here. You could see part of the tube. See, it looks a little rough there. But one part goes down right behind that purple support gusset that's sitting there. So it wasn't a clean shear 360 degrees. It had a little bit of a ripple to one side, but yeah, that's looks like what happened. You had a crack. The crack instantly propagated to 100% failure, and the arm fell off. Luckily, no one was killed. There's probably a lot of serious injuries here. I mean, that's really bad. It could have been a lot worse, though. It could have been a lot worse. So what are some takeaways for ride mechanics out there? Well, I could say make sure you're doing your inspections on the arm for sure. I don't know how many of these models are out there. I'm guessing these have probably been shut down by now. I'm not sure if there's been service bulletins generated. They're probably still trying to figure out what happened. But if you're in charge of a swinging style ride, there's a couple things. One is to make sure you're doing your inspections. Pay very close attention to any heat affected zones around welds, anything like that. And then the other thing is that a lot of people that have the ability to start twisting on drives, like the swing drives that actually make the ride work, a lot of people start playing with that stuff. Parks, by that I mean parks start playing with it to try to get the ride to work better or maybe work faster, do something like that. Speed and torque in these rides is the enemy. Like, it's fine to let them go 360 over and stuff like that, but if it needs 20 swings before it can get the gondola up and over, give it those 20 swings. I mean, in my opinion, you turn the torque down and let it take 25 swings. It might take a long time, but if you try to increase the torque to only get it to go over in we can get it to go over in 5 swings, it's like, that's not what the manufacturer intended. And then if you ever have questions about any of this stuff, I'm not the place to go for it, but if you ever have questions about it, contact the manufacturer if you're working on something. Contact the manufacturer and ask them. They're going to know. If you think your assembly is moving too fast, ask them. Say, hey, how many times should this thing swing before it goes over the top? And the manufacturer will probably come back to you and say, oh yeah, it's supposed to swing X amount of times before it swings over the top. It's like, cool. I don't have a lot of good experience with that to start with. I know there'll probably be comments after, well, how many swings do you think it should take for this type of ride to go over? I don't know. I tend to go safe. Like, these things should not, like I said, they should probably go 5 to 10% of their radius every time they swing. That's about it, 5%. 5% higher each time it swings. That's all. Anything more than that, that arm, that whole assembly better be designed to handle it, because the leverage you have when something's sitting 25, 30 feet away from the center point, it's a lot. It's enough to break something in half. All right. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff downstairs. It does help me out, and I do appreciate it. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you come up with any more information, or if someone eventually sees a report on this that they released the findings of what happened. Let me know. Love to hear it. All right. Stay off the air gates. Bye.